Kimberly Wright, a 27-year-old McDonald's cashier, works a double shift at a busy McDonald's on Fairfax Boulevard, Virginia. The dinner rush is in full swing, with the air filled with the aroma of fresh fries and grilled patties. Behind the counter, Kimberly adjusts her visor, wipes her hands, and prepares for another long shift, focused on her work and responsibilities. During the dinner rush at the McDonald's on Fairfax Boulevard, a tall, lanky teenager stood near the self-order kiosk, hesitating. Unlike the usual loud and restless kids, he was quiet and kept to himself, his hands tucked into the pockets of his hoodie. He scanned the menu overhead, carefully weighing his options as if each choice mattered. Kimberly Wright, the cashier, noticed him out of the corner of her eye, but didn't think much of it at first. As the line thinned, the boy stepped forward to place his order. In a soft, steady voice, he asked for a quarter-pounder meal, large. Kimberly punched in the order, but as she was about to tell him the total, his face changed. A flicker of panic crossed his expression as he patted down his hoodie pockets and then his jeans, realizing he had forgotten his wallet. The boy muttered, barely above a whisper, I think I forgot my wallet." He avoided eye contact, bracing himself for the usual reaction, an annoyed sigh or a forced apology before being turned away. The cashier next to Kimberly glanced over, curious to see how she would handle the situation. But Kimberly didn't hesitate. She tapped the screen, deleting the order, and said smoothly, "No problem. Happens to the best of us?" The boy exhaled in relief, but before he could step away, she added, "Hey, it's on me." She used her employee meal credit to cover the cost, handing him his receipt with a small smile. "You can pay it forward someday," she said, as if it were no big deal. The boy, stunned, nodded and thanked her quietly. He stepped aside to wait for his food, his demeanor still reserved, but visibly grateful. Kimberly returned to her work, unaware that this small act of kindness would soon change her life in ways she could never have imagined. As the dinner rush continued at the McDonald's on Fairfax Boulevard, Kimberly Wright, the 27-year-old cashier, noticed the tall, quiet teenager standing awkwardly at the counter. His face had changed when he realized he couldn't pay for his quarter-pounder meal, a flicker of panic crossing his expression as he patted down his pockets. Kimberly recognized that look, a customer who had forgotten their wallet or didn't have enough money. Instead of reacting with frustration or turning him away, Kimberly calmly deleted the order from the screen and said, "No problem, happens to the best of us." Her tone was reassuring, and the boy exhaled in relief. But before he could step away, Kimberly added, "Hey, it's on me." She used her employee meal credit to cover the cost of his meal, a gesture that cost her nothing financially, but meant everything in that moment. Handing him the receipt, she smiled and said, "You can pay it forward someday." Her words were simple, but carried a powerful message. Kindness doesn't need to be grand to make a difference. The boy, still stunned by her generosity, nodded and muttered a quiet "thank you." He stepped aside to wait for his food, his demeanor reserved but visibly grateful. Kimberly didn't think much of it afterward. To her, it was just a small act of decency, something she believed anyone would do. She returned to her work, taking orders and serving customers with the same efficiency and care as always. The boy, meanwhile, sat by the window, eating his meal quietly, occasionally glancing around the restaurant as if deep in thought. Little did Kimberly know, this simple act of kindness, helping a stranger in need without expecting anything in return, would soon come back to her in the most unexpected and life-changing way. Her belief in doing the right thing, even when no one was watching, was about to be rewarded in a way she could never have imagined. Kimberly wiped her hands on her apron, glancing out the window of the McDonald's where she worked. The black SUV had been parked outside since she started her shift, its tinted windows concealing whoever was inside. Something about it unsettled her, but she shook off the feeling and continued her routine. The next day, as she rang up an order, the restaurant's door swung open and a woman in dark sunglasses and an elegant coat stepped inside. Kimberly recognized her instantly, Melania Trump. The former First Lady walked straight up to the counter, removing her sunglasses as she fixed her gaze on Kimberly. "You helped my son," she said, her accent unmistakable. Kimberly blinked in surprise. "Your son?" "Barron Trump," Melania clarified. "The boy you assisted last week." Memories rushed back. How a tall, quiet teenager had come in alone, looking lost and out of place. He had ordered a simple meal and sat in the corner, barely touching his food. Kimberly had noticed how he kept glancing over his shoulder, as if someone was watching him. She had asked if he was okay, but he had only nodded before leaving in a hurry. He didn't say much," Kimberly admitted. "I just thought he needed some space." Melania sighed, glancing toward the SUV. "You were kind to him. That means something to me." She reached into her bag and placed a crisp envelope on the counter. "For your trouble?" Kimberly hesitated, but before she could protest, Melania was already walking away. The SUV door opened, and for a split second, she caught a glimpse of Barron inside. Then, just as unexpectedly as they had come, they were gone. Kimberly stared after them, the envelope still in her hands, wondering what had really happened that day. Kimberly stood frozen behind the counter, staring at the white envelope in her hands. She could feel the weight of it, not just physically, but the significance of what was inside. With slightly trembling fingers, she opened it, her eyes widening as she read the amount. $50,000. Her breath caught in her throat. I can't accept this," she stammered, looking up at Melania Trump, who stood across from her with a composed but warm expression. "You can," Melania said gently, "and you will. Your kindness made a difference, and you deserve this." Kimberly shook her head in disbelief. All she had done was show concern for a teenager who seemed a little lost. Never in a million years had she expected anything in return, certainly not this. Before she could gather her thoughts, Barron Trump stepped forward. His tall frame was a stark contrast to the shy, uncertain demeanor he had displayed the last time he was here. He met her gaze and extended a set of car keys. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "For everything." Kimberly hesitated before taking the keys, glancing outside where a brand new Toyota Camry sat gleaming in the parking lot. The moment felt surreal. As the Trump family turned to leave, the restaurant erupted in whispers and scattered applause. Kimberly stood in stunned silence, her co-workers murmuring in amazement around her. Later that night, Kimberly sat in her new car thinking about how a simple act of kindness had changed her life in ways she never imagined. It reminded her that sometimes the good we put into the world comes back to us when we least expect it.